Good afternoon. How is everybody doing? For those of you who may not know me, my name is Renarda Joy, and for the next 30 days, I have committed to giving you tools, tips, and insight for those of you who are new to real estate investing. Now, my mission, in case you're new to this channel, is to shrink the intergenerational wealth gap through real estate investing, and I use this platform to sound the alarm. Now, if you've missed any of our conversations, I invite you to go back and listen as we start day 14. If you got any questions or if I've given you any value, leave it in the comments and I promise to come back and respond. Now, before we get into today's conversation, you guys know I want to know who's here, where are you from, and what value have you gotten so far? Yesterday, we started talking a little bit about tenants. Today, I want to talk about how to think like a landlord. There's definitely a lot of things that you need to do, and I can only teach you a couple of tips and tricks in a few minutes. The first thing is you have to have an enforcer mindset. Yes, you heard the saying when you have a parent, the good cop, bad cop. Well, you got to have a balance of both, right? You got to be firm and you have to be assertive and you have to let your lease be your voice, which is why I strongly suggest that you don't download the leases that you find online because they're not state specific, nor are they going to cover your needs. You know, if you get connected to an attorney, they can help you draft one that's going to include language such as noise ordinance, or how do they handle the if you have a rooftop, what about access? How late can they be on the roof? What can they do on the roof? Can they sublet? Can they do Airbnb? I'll give you a quick story. I had an apartment where a tenant was renting, and she wanted to find out if she could put a lockbox in front of the property because she told me that she had a house cleaning person that was coming when she was at work. I said, okay, no problem. And then I started getting phone calls from the tenant saying, you know, every other couple of days they saw somebody new in her apartment. So I was in the neighborhood one day and I stopped by the property and I saw someone at this lockbox because I did see where she, put the lockbox. And this person had a suitcase. So I'm thinking, I don't think that this is part of the housekeeping team. So I approached the person only to find out that they had rented an Airbnb from this tenant for 7 days. So of course, because I had that in the lease, that was grounds for termination. Now, again, that's because I made sure the lease had the language that I needed to have in there to protect me. You have to make sure that you don't create leeway for your tenants because they're like kids. They will take advantage of it. And with you having leeway, you create a bigger issue. If you have late notices, make sure you enforce it. If it's late fees, if it's an eviction process, make sure you do what you say. Don't cry wolf. We talked a little bit about that yesterday. If you missed that conversation, I advise you to go back and listen to it. Now, the next thing is you have to work on your business and not in your business. We've talked about it a couple of days, looking at your P&L, which is your profit and loss statement. It tells a story. Remember, it tells you what's coming in for income and what's going out for expenses. It tells you what's working and what's not working. So make sure that you pay attention to that. You also need to look at your rent rolls. Make sure if there's any upcoming leases that are getting ready to expire. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. But what I also strongly suggest is every 6 months at daylight saving time that you go take a look at inside of the apartment. Outside you should be looking at it on a regular basis, but you should get inside your apartments at least twice a year. This tells you the wear and tear. This tells you if there's another person or pet that you weren't aware of that they're inside your apartment. It tells you, again, the wear and tear. So you can determine if you want to extend this tenant a new lease. So it's really good and recommended that you get into your apartments at least twice a year. Now, the third thing is you have to budget ahead, right? You never know what's going to happen. We're going to talk about in another day about CapEx, which is capital expenditures. There is going to be some upcoming wear and tear that you can't, it's not a matter of when or if, it's when, right? So keep that in mind. I don't know if you guys have been following me, if you've heard the story, but it bears repeating. I remember when I bought a property, it was a 2-family. One floor was vacant, one floor had a tenant. And an hour after closing, I went to the property. The sewer line was messed up. To make a long story short, the issue was on my line, which meant it was my issue. And my second floor tenant was a family of 6. I literally had to relocate them to a hotel for 20 days. So lucky for me, I went into this property with some set aside money because you always have to have cash reserves set aside. I mean, I didn't think I was going to need it the same day, but lucky for me, I did. So always budget ahead. So the next thing, think about your tenants. So I talked about a little bit about this. You should always check your rent rolls, making sure you're getting your rent so you know when to send out your late notices if you need to. But you should also look at it to see if there's any upcoming lease expirations. You should, out of good practice, you should send reminders 60 days prior to find out what is your tenant's intention. Are they going to stay or are they going to leave? And you should also include a timeline when they should let you know so that you can implement your game plan, right? What's your marketing plan? Are you going to put an ad together? Are you going to call a realtor? Is your property management company going to work on that? Do you have a running waiting list? Again, your goal is to never have a vacancy. So you have to plan ahead. You want to go from one tenant to the next and get creative to have long-term tenants. Maybe you should have, I've tried 24-month leases, right? And what I offer is 1 month free. But what I do is I give them maybe the 6th month, they'll get half month. And then maybe the 23rd month, they'll get the other half. That way, each month I'm getting something and I'm never having 1 month where I'm not getting any rents. That's just one way to look at it. So the last tip that I want to tell you of how to think like a landlord is you should always remain professional at all times. And what does that look like? That means that you should always be friendly, but still have a professional distance. Create boundaries. When you don't have those boundaries, tenants tend to think they can pay you late. They can break the rules. They don't think that it's going to be a problem. So make sure you have those healthy boundaries. So I hope that this has been helpful. I know we've said a lot of information. If you have any questions, if you've gotten any value from this, please feel free to leave that in the comment section. Now, if you're watching this outside of my business Facebook page, I invite you to come and join me at renardajoylive.com. That's renardajoylive.com. Now, I don't want you to join for the likes. I want you to join so that you can build your arsenal. So when it's time for you to buy your first investment property, you are ready. You have a strong tool belt. You'll be an informed investor, what I call a legacy setter. So again, if you're just joining us, we just wrapped up day 14. You feel free to go back. I invite you to listen to some of our previous conversations. And if you have any questions or if you've gotten any value, please feel free to leave that in the comment section. So as promised, I want to honor your time. I will be here each and every day, 6 p.m. EST. I will see you tomorrow. Have a good night.